Good evening, Americans, and welcome to the Ed Show from New York. Republicans have the audacity to attack a highly decorated veteran and label him as a dove? This is the Ed Show. Let's get to work.
Pleased to see an old friend here before the committee.
The Hagel hearing started out friendly and got ugly fast.
Were you correct or incorrect? Yes or no?
My reference to the surge being most dangerous.
Senator Hagel?
McCain, Inhofe, Graham, and Cruz all trying to destroy the president's pick for Secretary of Defense, who just happens to be a Republican. Retired Colonel Lawrence Wilkerson breaks down today's bizarre proceedings. Plus, Jonathan Alter on the new Democratic plan to take back the House using Citizens United. Another big-time Republican reveals his disgust for moochers on Social Security and Medicare. Richard Wolff, Howard Feynman, and David Corn break down the GOP's ongoing problem with half of America. And in center-left America, it is no longer okay to be a homophobic professional athlete.
To let all LGBT teens know that it gets better.
We'll tell you about the inspiring backlash to a 49ers anti-gay slur. Good to have you with us tonight, folks. Thanks for watching. You know, if you had lunch with somebody every Tuesday for 12 years, do you think you'd feel like you have got to know him a little bit? Chuck Hagel must have felt blindsided today by old Senate friends, because today Republican senators looked like they were competing for an Oscar. They tried to see which one could act the most outraged at President Obama's defense secretary nominee. Former Republican Senator Chuck Hagel was grilled during his confirmation hearings. Senator John McCain took the lead and set the tone early on.
Our concerns pertain to the quality of your professional judgment and your worldview on critical areas of national security, including security in the Middle East.
John McCain did not always have grave concerns about Chuck Hagel's worldview. In fact, he named Chuck Hagel a co-chair of his 2000 presidential campaign.
My fellow Americans, I introduce you to a great Republican, a great American leader, my friend, John McCain.
How come McCain didn't get that kind of greeting, huh? Or Hagel, should I say. Not only were Hagel and McCain good buddies, John McCain wanted to give Hagel the exact job he's up for right now. He told voters in New Hampshire there's a lot of people that could be Secretary of State, Secretary of Defense. One of them, I think, is Senator Chuck Hagel. But McCain sure has a different view of Hagel today. He still can't get over Hagel's opposition to the surge in Iraq.
Do you stand by those comments, Senator Hagel?
Well, Senator, I stand by them because I made them. And
were you right? Were you correct in your assessment?
Well, I would defer to the judgment of history to sort that out. But
the committee deserves your judgment as to whether you were right or wrong about the surge.
I'll explain why I made those comments. And
I want to know if you were right or wrong. That's a direct question. I expect a direct answer.
The surge assisted in the objective, but if we review the record a little bit.
Will you please answer the question? Were you correct or incorrect when you said that the surge would be the most dangerous foreign policy blunder in this country since Vietnam? Were you correct or incorrect? Yes or no?
My reference to the surge being the most dangerous.
Senator Hagel, the question is, were you right or wrong? That's a pretty straightforward question.
Well,
I would like to answer whether you were right or wrong, and then you are free to elaborate.
Well, I'm not going to give you a yes or no answer on a lot of things.
Show that
today.
You refused to answer that question. Now, please go ahead.
Well, if you would like me to explain why.
I actually would like an answer. Yes or no?
Well, I'm not going to give you a yes or no. I think it's far more complicated than that. As I've already said, my answer is I'll defer that judgment to history.
Now, put yourself in Hagel's position. Did that man just show a tremendous amount of discipline? I think he did. There is still no consensus about the so-called success of the surge. After the surge, the U.S. still lost nearly 1,000 troops, along with an unknown number of Iraqi civilians, not to mention it cost an additional $1 trillion. Hagel wanted to get out and refocus on Afghanistan. But another reason Republicans wanted to stick it to Hagel is because they just dislike the President of the United States. In 2008, Hagel helped burnish Barack Obama's candidacy by traveling to the Middle East with him. Senator Lindsey Graham also calls himself a friend of Chuck Hagel. Today, he was anything but that. Graham harped on a comment Hagel made in the past about the Israeli lobby. Hagel has since apologized for the comments.
Name one dumb thing we've been goaded into doing because of the pressure from the Israeli or Jewish lobby.
I have already stated that I regret the terminology.
But you said back then it makes us do dumb things. Right. So give me an example of where we've been intimidated by the Israeli Jewish lobby to do something dumb regarding the Mideast, Israel, or anywhere else.
Well, I can't give you an example.
Thank you. Do you agree with me? You shouldn't have said something like that?
Yes, I do. I've already said that.
When Hagel's old friends weren't settling scores, conservative senators were trying to make names for themselves. Senators James Imhoff opened the hearing saying that he will oppose Hagel no matter what.
But I want to state that I believe that he's the wrong person to lead the Pentagon at this perilous and consequential time.
Tea Party Senator Ted Cruz tried to gin up an old conservative boogeyman.
I'd like to draw your attention to an interview you did in 2009 with Al Jazeera.
But here's the real reason. These guys don't want Chuck Hagel in the Defense Department. This is the bomb Iran crowd. You see, McCain and Graham have led the charge for possible war against the Iranians as well as Syria. Chuck Hagel sees war as an absolute last resort. It's why President Obama picked him. The two share similar views and philosophies as the Obama administration attempts to define the role of the United States in the transition to a post-superpower world. Their philosophy is this: the United States must get out of these massive land wars, Iraq and Afghanistan, and if possible, avoid future large-scale war. Despite all of the posturing and StarCraft, Hagel's nomination, well, is not in jeopardy. Not one senator who previously voiced support for Hagel has changed his or her mind. I think a lot of this has to do with jealousy. Chuck Hagel has an extraordinary background, very diverse. It all starts with being a combat veteran in Vietnam and, of course, educated under the GI Bill. He understands veterans, issues, and the possibility of what military war does, of course, to the guys on the ground. He has experience in Washington and in the business world unparalleled to anybody on that Senate Armed Services Committee. He's a self-made guy in American business. This man has a resume most of these senators wish they had. He never did anything as reckless as John McCain did when he picked Sarah Palin to be a heartbeat away from the presidency. Gosh, I wish he could have reversed the questioning today. If you ask me, this opposition to Hagel is nothing but sour grapes, jealousy and envy. This man is qualified. He has impeccable integrity. He would be perfect. He also knows how to manage people, departments, and he'll be able to get his arms around the Pentagon budget, and maybe they can finally audit themselves. As we've had senators on this program say, the Pentagon is so big they can't even audit themselves. Give Hagel a shot. He deserves it because he was shot at in Vietnam, and he knows what troops go through. Get your cell phones out. I want to know what you think. Tonight's question: do Republicans want a defense secretary who would just lead us into more wars? Text A for yes, text B for no to 622-639. You can always go to our blog at ed.msnbc.com and leave a comment there. We'll bring you the results later on in the show. Joining me tonight, Colonel Lawrence Wilkerson, former chief of staff of the State Department during Colin Powell's term, and is currently a distinguished visiting professor at the government and public policy at the College of William and Mary. Colonel, good to have you with us tonight. Did Chuck Hagel deserve the treatment that he got from these senators today? Was it out of line in any way?
It's a pretty rough whirl, and I'm sure Senator Hagel, whom I've known for almost 2 decades, realized that and knew, because of his previous moderate positions within his party, moderate positions becoming as scarce as almost anything in the Republican Party, he was going to be taken to task. I want to say that the most encouraging remarks I heard from him were in his opening remarks. I didn't think that as a 31-year enlisted and officer veteran of the United States Army, I'd ever hear a Secretary of Defense candidate say the kinds of things that he did, the eloquent things that he did in his opening remarks, where he addressed the grunt, the infantryman, Marine and soldier, who bears the brunt of this country's wars, bears the brunt of the dying and the bleeding on the battlefield. Those were such eloquent remarks that I think for that alone, Senator Hagel deserves a great deal of acclaim and should have had more deference from the members of that committee, most of whom have never been where he's been.
Is there any difference between Chuck Hagel today and the Chuck Hagel who was one of John McCain's campaign co-chairs?
Not a bit, and I take your point. It would have been my point had you not already made it. How dare John McCain question the professional judgment of Chuck Hagel? That's just unbelievable that those words came out of John McCain's mouth.
Is McCain bitter? I mean, McCain really went after him. It looked like Hagel was caught off guard, like, John, you and I have been friends for a long time. I did some good things for you. I supported you when I needed it, and you know I'm qualified for this job to be the head of the Pentagon, Defense Secretary. It was almost like he was stunned by it. Your thoughts?
I think you're right. I think it was very personal. I was stunned by it, too, especially the way McCain kept pursuing it. Clearly, John wanted Chuck to say, yes, I was wrong and you were right. And, of course, the verdict of history, as Hagel tried to say, is still out on that. And, frankly, in my view as a soldier, the surge had almost nothing to do with the actual increase in American troops. What it had to do was the coincidence of a number of things that were already moving in Iraq, not least of which was the awakening. And it had to do with, very frankly, a general by the name of David Petraeus taking advantage of this in order to enhance his own reputation. And as far as I'm concerned, the increase in troops had nothing to do with the change in the situation in Iraq, except that it got a bunch of them killed, as Senator Hagel was careful to point out.
And that is paralleling his opening comments, which you talked about how he cared about those soldiers. There was no guarantee that the surge was good. There was no guarantee the surge was going to work. The popularity of the war had dwindled dramatically in this country, and Hagel was asking basic questions at the time that simply were not being answered. And so it brings me to this point. Go ahead.
I just have to say that's what I like about Chuck Hagel. He asks the right questions. Whether he's right or wrong ultimately in his own position is not as important as he knows how to ask the right questions. And you put together a good team, which I think President Obama is trying to do, and that's the essence of good decision making, is asking the right questions.
Will he be a good Secretary of Defense?
I think he'll be an exceptional one, and I look forward to his being confirmed.
All right. Colonel Lawrence Wilkerson, good to have you with us tonight here on The Ed Show. Thanks so much.